Hello and welcome to the Pleasurepreneur podcast. This podcast will help you create what you desire in your business with pleasure. Whether that be calling in your ideal clients, making more money, or creating a balanced business life blend. I'm your host, Regan Fig, pleasure and business coach, published author of A Mother's Pleasure, wife and mama to 3 little wildlings. However you're choosing to listen to this podcast, ask yourself, how can I make this more pleasurable? And do just that. I acknowledge the custodians of the land on which this podcast is recorded and produced, the Wadi Wadi people of Dharawal land. Now, let's proceed with pleasure. G'day. All right, I'm going to have a conversation about the 7 signs that there is a pleasure deficiency when launching. Now, chances are you are here listening to this because you want to experience more pleasure in your business operations. You want to be able to enjoy your business more. You want to be able to launch in a way that feels good and right and true for you. Maybe that's because you've already launched before and you have come across these signs. You have perhaps experienced depletion and burnout and you've not enjoyed it and you felt overwhelmed and you've ended up snapping at your kids and a whole range of things. Or maybe it's because you haven't launched yet and you want to start from a place that feels good and right and true for you, and you don't want to start to accumulate any, I'm going to use the phrase bad habits for lack of a better words. You don't want to exhaust yourself, risk burning out because you don't know of any other way. And so I guess that brings me to the question of perhaps asking yourself, if you have been launching before and you've been doing it in a way that hasn't felt good for you, that hasn't brought you any pleasure, I would just invite you to get curious about why. Why have you been tolerating launching in a way that does deplete you, in a way that doesn't feel good for you? And I bet it is one of 2 answers, maybe even both. And the first one is there's probably a part of you that doesn't believe that you can make money and enjoy the process. Or you think the more you enjoy it, the less of a result you'll create. There is a connection between hard work and struggle and value and results, right? There's this belief that you have to sacrifice one or the other. You can either have money and financial results, or you can have enjoyment and pleasure. And in my world, we connect the 2. You have both. And in fact, pleasure and enjoyment actually improves your results quite dramatically. We're not going to go into a lot of that today, but what I am going to share with you are those 7 signs that there is a pleasure deficiency in your launching process. Oh, and the other part was, so I said there was 2 reasons why you're tolerating launching in a way that isn't pleasurable. The first is there's a part of you that doesn't believe that it's possible to launch in a way that feels pleasurable and create the goals, the launch goals that you have, whether that's a sales goal or sign-up goals. And the second part is that maybe you just simply don't know how to launch your program, your course, your group offering in a way that feels good for you. And so this is exactly what I share this week in my free 7-day experience called Launch Like a Pleasurepreneur. We're starting on Thursday. I'll tell you a bit more about it perhaps towards the end. So there's a good chance that you're here because you want to launch in a way that feels good for you and doesn't deplete you. You want to operate your business in a way that doesn't deplete you, that feels really good for you and improves your results, right? You want to make more money. And so let's dive into these 7 signs that there is a pleasure deficiency in your launching process, right? Okay, so you can tick them off as you go. As I said, this is not for you to feel bad about yourself, but it's just to indicate that there is opportunity for improvement through pleasure. And when you can weave more pleasure into your launch processes, which I'm talking about launching at the moment, right? Because I'm offering this freebie this week and there's a lot of my clients and a lot of you in my community who are launching, and you're looking maybe to next year, early next year, to launching perhaps a group program or a course, and you want to do it in a way that feels good. So that's why I'm talking about coursing. But typically I help my clients weave pleasure into all business operations. And when we do that, we make so much more money. Okay, so Here are 7 signs that there is a pleasure deficiency when you're launching. So the first one is your nervous system. It's not feeling so great. Like you are snapping at your kids. You're not connecting with your partner, and you're feeling probably really guilty about that. But you're just kind of like hanging in there. Like you're hoping that like by the time that this launch is finished, then you can like make up for it afterwards. Yeah, so maybe you're snapping at your family. Little things are irritating you. You're being easily triggered. Yeah, so your nervous system is quite activated. Your sympathetic nervous system is quite activated, right? So that's telling us that there is a stress response happening. So number 1, if you're launching and you are noticing that you're getting a little bit more snappy and irritable and all those kind of things, that's telling you you need more pleasure in your launch. Number 2, you are finding yourself fueling yourself on your kids' leftovers, on, regular caffeine fixes that you wouldn't normally have. You are not focused on your nourishment, and you're doing things like, like you're not nourishing yourself as much. You're taking less time to nourish yourself and focusing more attention on work. So that's number 2. Number 3, you know that you need more pleasure in your launch process when you can see that you've let your self-care rituals slide. So your meditation, regular exercise sessions, think about whatever it is that you do for self-care, and think about perhaps your past launches, or maybe you're in a current launch now. Maybe you're noticing that you haven't gone to your usual regular yoga class, or you aren't journaling in the mornings as you normally would, or going on your regular walks or meditation, what have you, right? When you are launching, that is the time when you want to double down on those kind of things, when you want to weave in more pleasure. So you'll know that there is a pleasure deficiency when you're like, oh my gosh, I was up working so late instead of getting a good night's rest. Yeah. And FYI, let's remember, we can launch in a way that feels good and make the financial impact we want to create, And chances are, if you're not creating the results that you want in your business, if you are not creating the financial results, the sign-up results in your launches, and you are really busy in your launches, chances are you're focusing on the wrong things to be busy with. You're taking whatever action it is that you're taking. If it's not creating the result that you want, it's probably not the right action to be taking. So what we do, and what I'm going to share with you this week in Launch Like a Pleasurepreneur, is look at those essential only actions that you want to tick off. We've got a whole lean launch checklist, right? Where if you don't have a team, if you don't have a lot of time to be in your business, maybe that's because you look after kids, or you've got another job, or maybe you really just don't want to be in your business full-time hours. And we want to make sure that the time that we're using to work on our launch is used by taking action that is actually going to move the needle to create the results that you want to create. Yeah. So the 4th sign that you have a pleasure deficiency in your launching is that you are checking your launch stats more and more, like more than you want to be, right? I don't want to say like obsessively, but you are like consistently checking if people have signed up, if people are watching your stories, if anyone swiped your little swipey or your polls on your stories, if people have opened your emails, if they've clicked the link, right? And you're doing that more than you would like to admit, right? This constant checking, again, tells us we need to weave in more pleasure. What this tells me is that we have that active sympathetic nervous system. And what happens when we've got an active sympathetic nervous system, a stress response, is we're looking for danger, right? And the way that we feel safe is by like looking to quantify anything that could be of danger. So if we're feeling like we're in a stress response, we're not in the cave anymore, there's not a saber-toothed tiger around the corner, but a stress response and a place of, if we feel unsafe within our launch, that usually comes from seeking confirmation that it's working or that people want it or people are interested in it, right? And so this constant checking, we're looking for that confirmation that it's okay, you know what you're doing, it's okay, people want this, it's okay, people are going to buy it, you're going to reach your goal, right? And so when you are, checking these stats regularly, that is because you've got this activated sympathetic nervous system. And what happens when you weave in pleasure is that it soothes your nervous system. When you have a soothed nervous system, you're not obsessively checking those stats, right? Interrupting this episode with a freebie for you so that you can create a 5-figure launch whilst prioritizing pleasure without the burnout. Recently, I launched the Pleasurepreneur Mastermind. And 2 out of those 3 weeks of the launch were in school holidays with all 3 kids home with me full time. It was a major oversight, but I went with it. I created 5 figures from that launch and I wrapped it up feeling excited and inspired and far from depletion. And when my clients started asking questions about how I was able to create that result with so many balls in the air and still feel good and resourced and enjoy the process dripping with children, I gave them my behind the scenes insight. And this is exactly what I have now packaged up and will be sharing with you. Head over to reganfig.com/launch or click the link in the show notes. All right, let's get back into it. So yeah, again, don't use this to shame yourself or feel bad about it. It's just information. It's really good to have. It's good to know that oh shit, I'm doing these things and I don't really want to be, because it's actually going to mess with your results. When you are in a really good place and you're feeling good and you don't have your nervous system stressed, so much changes. Just the really simple things, the functioning of your brain works so much better when you are not stressed. We know this, right? And so that means we are making better decisions. We are noticing better opportunities. We're so much more creative. We've got better ideas. We're so much more resilient. We're resilient to that mid-launch dip, which I'll be talking about soon. So yeah. All right. So that's number 4. You know that you need more pleasure in your launch when you are obsessively checking your stats. Maybe not obsessively, just more than you'd like to admit, right? Number 5. Ooh, this one might be one that everyone ticks, I reckon. You are catching yourself comparing your launch to others. Yeah. So you're gauging what other people are, what other people's results are. Yeah, maybe you're looking at other people who are launching at the same time as you or who have launched previously, and maybe you're considering, I'm trying to come up with examples. I don't really do much comparing anymore. I've done the inner work, guys. It is possible to not then be comparing with other people, but I'm trying to think of some examples. You are looking at other people's Instagram and thinking, wow, they've got such a more engaged community. I bet they've got 1 million people looking at their stories. And wow, this person, they've said that they've got 1 billion people on their mailing list or on their wait list for their course. I didn't even think about a wait list, or you know what I mean? When we are comparing with other people, that's a sign that we need more pleasure. When you have woven pleasure into your life and you've experienced pleasure on a regular basis and you know how to open to and prioritize pleasure, you're not interested in what everyone else is doing because you're enjoying yourself, And when you're enjoying yourself, that also raises the bar for what you're willing to put up with. And that includes your mind wanting to go and compare yourself with everyone else. Yeah, you kind of go, you know what? It's actually quite fun over here. I don't want to be doing that because that makes me feel like shit. Yeah. So number 5 is you catch yourself comparing your launch to others. And that usually leaves you feeling frustrated, uninspired. I want to say deflated. Yeah. And then questioning the worth of your work, your program, your course, your group, whatever it is that you're launching. Yeah. And this wastes so much time. Remember how I talked about before about the limited time that we may or may not have? If you've got limited time, you really want to ensure that the action that you're taking and the time that you're spending on whatever it is you're using with your time and your energy, you want to ensure that your time and your energy is spent on things that are moving the needle. Comparing yourself to other people is not going to move the needle. The antidote to comparison is pleasure. Honestly, I feel like the antidote to everything is pleasure. But anyway, that's like a whole nother book for me to write. Okay, the sixth sign that there is a pleasure deficiency in your launch process, and maybe even like in your business operations, is that you're using phrases like I have to do X, Y, and Z instead of like I get to. Yeah, like this perspective shift when you desire to do something and it brings you pleasure, it's not a like I have to. It's like I get to do this now. Yeah. And so I want you to notice when you are saying things like, I have to, instead of like, I get to, you're moving from a place of obligation, which tells me this is a beautiful indicator that you are doing things that you feel like you should, not things that bring you pleasure, not things that you desire, not things that excite you and activate you and motivate you. Yeah. When we are attuned to what we desire and we honor that and we follow that, that cultivates natural motivation and momentum for what it is that we want. Yeah. Think about whatever it is that you want versus something that you think that you have to do. And like immediately I have to do this obligation, I should be doing this. It's like a sinking feeling, right? It's like like my shoulders hunched in and like I sink and I'm a bit like contracted. It's like a heaviness. Yeah. But I want you to play with this as well. When you tune into like what you desire, like what do you want? Like immediately I'm already like expanding my chest, moving forward. Like, oh yes, my eyes are open. I'm lighting up, So when you can really dial in with what brings you pleasure and incorporate that into your launch, then you have just incorporated natural motivation and momentum into your launch. That means you don't have to force yourself. You don't have to dig up all of this willpower and masculine energy of which you have finite resources if you're a feminine being, right? So when you can really attune to the things that you enjoy and weave them into your launch, there is going to be a whole lot of obligation and shoulds, in quotations, removed from your launch. And that just clears out a big path of resistance. Yeah. All right. So the seventh sign, there is a pleasure deficiency when launching, it's not a fun one. And it might seem, maybe you don't even notice it. It might seem like little niggles, but it is physical symptoms like headaches, feeling tired, having a hard time falling asleep, or waking up in the middle of the night, not being able to go back to sleep. If you've got little people like me who still like to come into your bed, maybe, they come into your bed and instead of falling back to sleep, you're awake. Maybe you're not particularly thinking about things from your launch, but there are these physical signs and these physical symptoms that you're noticing during your launch period or leading up to your launch period. And so if you're noticing these kind of things, that tells me you need more pleasure. Yeah, pleasure, it creates fuel for us. Yeah, pleasure nourishes us. When we can nourish ourselves, when we can fuel ourselves in a really natural way, we are not going to have issues falling asleep. Yeah, again, it comes back to the nervous system. We are so much more settled and soothed. Yeah, we are not going to have, we're not going to notice as many things like headaches and fatigue. We're going to feel excited and enthusiastic and, we're ready for it. We're ready for our launch. We're excited. And this brings me to our last bonus sign. I didn't know if I wanted to put this one in here or not because this is what happens at the end of the launch. Okay, so it's not like something that you'll clue onto during your launch, but you'll notice it at the end of your launch. So for anyone who has already launched a program, a course, a group experience, and you've gotten to the end of your launch and you are like over it before your program or your course or your group has even begun, you know that you needed more pleasure in that launch. Yeah. So if you feel over it before you've even started it, and I'm not talking about the launch here, I'm talking about your course, your program, your group coaching space, whatever it is that you're launching, if you're over it before you've even started it, that tells me that there has been a pleasure deficiency in your launch process. Hello, Anna, how are you? Okay, so those are the 7 signs of pleasure deficiency when launching, plus a bonus. And as I said to start with, if you know that you want to be experiencing more pleasure in your launches, and there is a part of you that knows it's possible to launch in a way that you enjoy, that feels good and right and true for you, and it doesn't mean sacrificing financial outcomes, it actually means exponentially improving your financial outcomes, then I want you to sign up to Launch Like a Pleasurepreneur that I'm running this Thursday. It's completely free, right? It's going to be run in Telegram and it's going to be super fun. So there'll be bite-sized trainings for you each day and a little activity. I shouldn't call it a little activity. They're powerful prompts. There's power plays each day for you to play with, where you're going to take an activity, a bit of homework that you can do that will really apply and harness what you're learning each day in those trainings. So I was originally going to be running a multi-day masterclass. And then I decided I want to make this really easy for you. And I tuned into what would bring me pleasure and what would feel really good for me. And that was a multi-day experience in Telegram. So you're going to get these bite-sized pieces already recorded each day, and you're going to be able to listen to them at a time that suits you during the day. So I've said maybe allocate around like 30 minutes a day, probably less than that, to listen in. Obviously, you can listen in to these trainings whilst you're hanging out the washing or driving to work or whatever it is that you're doing. And then each power play that you get each day is going to support what you're learning that day. All right, my love. So this Thursday, come and learn to launch like a pleasurepreneur with me. As I said, chances are you want to do this. You want to know how to make your launches feel really good. But either one, there's a part of you that doesn't believe that you can launch in a way that feels good and create the results. And the other part is perhaps you just don't really know how you can make it more pleasurable. I'm going to show you exactly what I do. I only work part-time hours. I've got 3 small kids. 2 are at school, the other one's home with me most of the time. She's out with her dad this morning. And so, yeah, I've got maybe 10 hours a week for work, and that includes my one-on-one and my group coaching sessions. And so, yeah, I want to make sure that the hours and the energy I'm spending in those small windows of time are really effective. And so I'm going to share that with you. My last launch I had was the Pleasurepreneur Mastermind. That was a 5-figure launch. And if you guys have listened to one of my last podcast episodes, you'll know that my launch, I didn't look ahead to when school holidays were. And so 2 out of the 3 weeks of my launch were in school holidays when I had all the kids home with me. And it just coincided with a month when my husband had these big exams each week for a month. Plus he was full-time working. Like, it was a lot. And yeah, I was able to, this was a talking point with my clients. They wanted some behind the scenes of how I was able to create a 5-figure launch whilst having all my kids at home 2 out of 3 weeks and still feel like excited and inspired and still feel really good in myself. And so this is how Launch Like a Pleasurepreneur has been cultivated, has been birthed, because I want to share all of those pieces with you. It's completely free, so click the link in the show notes. What else do I want to share with you? There's already a bunch of you already inside. I'm super excited. I think that's it for now. But thank you for joining me. Let's launch like a pleasurepreneur. I want you to be able to create some really epic results in your business from this, like both financial and, client signups, as well as the internal metrics, right? The people who I work with, you are not interested in making a shit ton of money at the cost of your health, your relationships, your connection with your kids, the time you have with your family, the things that you enjoy. Yeah, this is what we work on, creating the externally validating results such as sales and signups, as well as the internally nourishing results. All right, I'm going to leave it there and I will see you in there. I'm very excited, and enjoy the rest of your day. Mwah. Bye for now.